Hi, everybody. I'm going to give everyone a few more minutes to check in because it is a cold December morning. In the meantime, if you look over on one side of your screen, you should see something that's like a bunch of yellow tags. That is the showcase. Actually, no, it's at the top. My apologies. It's at the top of the screen. If you click on a bunch of like boxes, it'll drop down and there's an icon that looks like a bunch of tags that showcase, and there's the chat room for the class. And actually, let me just go ahead and put it up here. Okay, so it's tlk.io / I can't do a slash on this, PyLadies DC. Although I wonder if I could do escape into the slash. Nope, doesn't like that either. Okay, that's our chat room for the class. So make sure you're in there because that is where you're going to get help from volunteers and from your fellow classmates. I won't be checking it until I'm between, actual sections. So we will start at probably 9:40. That's my dog. I am hoping he will stay quiet for most of this video, but there's been something that's been ticking him off outside. That's my husband. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Cunningham, and this is the class on Flask for PyLadies DC. So before we get started, I wanted to talk about the Google on-air interface. You should see a bunch of some boxes like up there. And if you click on that, there should be a number of apps. And there's two apps. One is a Q&A app that's a little blue speaking out box with Q&A on it. That's where you can ask me questions. That's for like more in-depth questions like, can you go over this again? What about this? That kind of stuff. I will look at those between sections. If you have an emergency, like you need, like something's not working or you need a quick clarification, I recommend going to the chat room. The chat room is at tlk.io/PyLadiesDC. The second thing you probably need to know about is there's in the apps little drop down, there's a thing, an icon with a bunch of like little yellow tags. If you open up that, that's the showcase. And I will put links there that are pertinent to the class. So right now, if you open up the showcase, there is a link for the chat room, a link for the Flask website, a link for pip, and a link for Git. So those are the two things you should know about. So if you have an immediate concern or you just need a quick question answered, go over to the chat room. People will answer it there. If it's a in-depth one, go ahead and ask in the QA. And all the links that I'm using for the class are going to be in the Showcase app. So let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about Flask, and it's actually kind of sneaky. It's actually two classes in one because we're also going to start setting up your environment to work like most other Python developers. So Flask is a micro framework. You can basically use a little bit of code and you can use that code to actually create a website. It's very easy. So if you go down here, this code right here, that will create a website. You would run that and it would start up a web server and you'd be able to go to it only on your local machine, but you could easily take this over to another, to some sort of host, put it up there. As long as there's Flask installed, you can run it and you will have a website. Flask is very lightweight, so it tends to not have a lot, doesn't have a lot that comes with it. So there's no like user authentication, there's no, you know, database, stuff like that just doesn't come with Flask. The power behind Flask is the fact that it's so easy to set up. And as somebody who often spends, you know, when I start a new Django site, who spends the first half hour trying to remember like, oh, what's this setting, you know, and how do I do this and where does this go? And oh, it's in the wrong place and moving everything around. Flask is a breath of fresh air. It doesn't mean you can solve every problem with Flask, but if you have a very simple website you want to put up, then Flask can get it up very quickly with no fuss, no muss. So originally I was going to post a bunch of videos on how to install various things, but I started a new job this month, so I didn't have as much free time as I thought I would. So I'm going to go over pretty quickly how to get up and running, and I'm going to pause after we get over the installation, like the install fest, so we can get everybody caught up. If you don't want to install anything, there's another option though. It's called Python Anywhere. Python Anywhere is great. I love it. It's pythonanywhere.com, and you can go there and just for free sign up, doesn't cost anything, and you can create a Flask website. That also includes Django, but for some reason the Django they're using, they only use Python 3, which is fine. But if you're not familiar with Python 3, then you could have a few you could have a little trouble getting started, but it actually will run you through a tutorial. So you can go there. Actually, let me add this to the showcase. And we'll go over all kinds of options for hosting at the end of the class. So let's go over the stack really quickly. The things that we're going to talk about, the things that are involved in our stack, which is basically the applications we're going to use to run Flask. We're going to need Python, of course, Python 2.7 preferably. You should be fine if you're 2.6, but nothing earlier than that, I believe. You will also need something called pip. Where are you, pip? Pip is short for Python. It's like Python installer package. It's pip. Basically, what pip does is it will go out, if you want to install something, it will go out to a website called PyPy Packaging and grab everything you need to install something. There's no installer for Flask. So, you know, when you installed Python, you went out, you grabbed an installer, you downloaded it, you just ran it, and everything was great. The thing is, with most Python development, you're not going to get that. I can only think of actually one other package that has an installer, and that's Pygame. And that's because Pygame has a lot of complicated stuff. Involved, like, you know, a lot of C packages, a lot of just weird bindings and stuff that have to do with graphics and, you know, doing 3D things and sound stuff. So for the most part, when a developer decides I want to use this package, we actually type pip install and then whatever we're supposed to type. Like I would say type pip install Flask. The reason we do that is because most packages require more than one thing. So pip requires like 4 other things. And I actually started development before pip happened. And trust me, it was a pain in the butt to go out and have to download and install everything in exactly the right order. So it is well worth your time to get pip installed. The other thing we're going to be using is Git. Git is a way to version your code. So you can save like different versions of your code, and you can actually push it up to a server and save all those versions, which can be very important if you're, you know, want to experiment on something, try something out. It's also heavily used. Like I use Git, you know, to develop. I also use it to get other people's code, because with Git, you can check out other people's code. So here we're on GitHub. And by the way, just a clarification, GitHub does not own Git. Git is its own project and GitHub uses it. GitHub is not the only places that uses Git. I know GitLabs does, and I actually think Google Code might have added it, and Bitbucket also use Git. So there are lots of projects on Git. You can actually create an account, create your own projects. And this is like the project for my class. So it's Cunning Flask class. And I could use the URL over here. It's kind of hard to see. Use the URL here that I can copy and use that to check out the code. And what's cool is when I check out the code, I check out all the different versions that come with it. So I could go like back in time, which is one of the things we're going to be doing. So first, if you want to install Git, I've added a link here. You'll want to go into the showcase and look for Git downloads. These actually are installers. So yay, you can just run an installer and get Git on your system. You can also, if you like GUI clients, GUI means graphical user interface. So if you want something that has, you know, a nice little interface to it, there's a bunch if you click on GUI clients. I tend to not use them. I tend to just use the command line, but I'm very comfortable with the command line. For pip, pip is a little bit more interesting to install. Basically with pip, because for some reason we haven't actually created an installer for this, you'll want to download this file. So you go to the link that I had for pip. Let me make sure the link is correct. Okay. If you look under install pip, there's a file called getpip, and you'll want to actually save the file, and you'll want to run it. So you'll actually run it with Python. So you'll open up a terminal or a command window, like on your computer. So let's see, and you'll want to run it. It's not always the easiest thing, and if you don't get everything installed, it can be kind of complicated. Don't feel, just go over to Python Anywhere, and you can follow the class there. And I'll be posting the code as I go along. So let's see, where are we? So let's see, I had one pull out earlier, and I want to look at the results. So most everyone is on a Mac. We have one Linux person and 4 Windows people. Okay, so the first thing I'd recommend installing is Git, since that's the easiest. And I'm just reading up on the chat. Now let's see, I know that some people are repeats from the last time when they had everything installed. So I'm going to make a new poll. Okay, I put up a new poll. Just curious to see if there's people from last time who I knew were going to show back up. And in the meantime, I'm going to, you can save the getpip file anywhere you want. Yeah, just because you're just going to run it. It doesn't matter. You can delete it once it's done. So I would go here. Let me show you. I'll save it as getpip. Save it. Now let's see. I don't think I can run it from here. So for me, it's already installed. Now, if you were on Windows, if you're on a Mac and you run this, you are probably going to have to type the following. Here, let me clear. No, clear. You're probably going to have to type the following. Sudo. No. There, now you can see it. Sudo python get pip.py. If you're on a Mac, that's what you're going to want to type. If you have pip installed, then all you have to do is type. So we'll get to that. So if you are on a Mac, this is what you'll have to type. If you're on a Windows, you'll probably have to open up a terminal that if you get any, you either will get an error that says, you need administrative privileges, and you'll have to allow it because you are installing something on your system. In older versions of Windows, I believe you actually have to open up a special command prompt that is an administrator command prompt. So just search for command prompt or just command, and you should see 2 options. If you don't, it should just warn you. So I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to get pip installed. And that's the hardest one. Now, once you have pip installed, you can use pip to install Flask. Yep, just like it is in the thing. And just like somebody said, pip install Flask, and that's it. And what that is going to do, so let's see, I'm actually going to create like something called a virtual environment. I won't go into that this class. I'm going to do a class later on where we actually set up our entire environment and make everything nice and pretty, and so you know how to like get in and out of these special like developer tools. So this will not work on your system. Do yeah, you might be able to just double oh, Eliza, you actually might not have permissions on your laptop. So if you get an error like, like, oh, this is in the suit, not in the sudoers file, this incident will be reported. Okay, that's a really standard like Mac and Linux message. You're not going to get reported more than likely. It just means that you might not have permission to make edits to your laptop to install it. So you will probably have to go and just use, for now, Python Anywhere. So here I'm going to run pip install Flask. So I have pip installed, but I don't have Flask installed. And as you can see, it's doing all kinds of stuff. Stuff is flashing up on the screen. It's not important. But if you look at this bottom part, I'm going to move my talking head up here. It says successfully installed Flask, Workzug, Jinja, it's dangerous, and markup safe. And basically, because Flask requires all those things, almost every Python project out there has at least one other requirement somewhere. So these are all the things that Flask requires. This is why pip is awesome, because I didn't have to worry about, what do I need to install? It just installed everything I needed. Yes, and so if you're on Windows, you'll need to run as an administrator, or sometimes they pop up a box depending on your version of Windows. I think 7 just popped up a box and said, hey, do you really want to do this if you have admin privileges? The usual security thing. You're not doing anything insecure, just click OK. And I'm actually going to add the code for the class here. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to get caught up with pip and Flask. Yay! We have people that installed Flask. Woo! And if at this point you're like, oh my God, I'm getting so many errors, just go over to Python Anywhere, and I'll even show you, I'll even log in and mess around with it for a bit. So you see, it's not scary. It's great. It's actually one of the places where I learned Flask. And it's great because they do have other things you can learn while you're in there. So let me log in. Yay, I remembered it. Okay. So this doesn't look all that helpful, and this may not be the screen you will get on your first login, because I've been through all the tutorials. So if you go to web, let's see, I'm going to delete, yeah, go ahead and delete it. If you go under web, you'll see here, it says add a new web app. You can click that. Yeah, I don't want to upgrade, I'm cool. So you need to select one of these. These are all the different, things you can install. Just go with Flask, go with 2.7, and hit next. If you go under Files, under My Site, let's see. So see, there you go. You actually have a little Flask app that you can work with. And you can save and run. And if you go to Python, it would be your username, pythonanywhere.com. You can see your website, really tiny. But see, it says hello from Flask. So you can mess around with there. So let's see. I mean, at this point, let me clarify, Tammy. Python Anywhere is basically for people that are having issues trying to install Flask. So some people don't have the right permissions. Some people's paths are, not in the right place. So it's the backup method. Personally, I prefer developing on my own machine, but this works perfectly fine. Now, if you are using Python Anywhere, and if you want to follow along with my code, there's two ways to do that. You can either download Git, so we're moving on to like Git at this point, and you would download it from the website that's linked in the showcase. It's just an installer. Just hit next, next, next. And what you'll have to do is, depending on how you checked out code or how you did it, you should have like Git in your command line at this point. So first I'm just marking because it's going to bug me until they go away. Okay. In the showcase, there is a link, K-Cunning Flask class. If you go there, it'll bring you to this website. And here it shows all the files. You can actually see like the history, like everything I've checked in. You can see, who's following it, who started, who's forked it. Oh, I have 6 forks. Fork just means they've made a version of their own. And if you go here, the clone URL, you can check it out. Now, if you don't have Git working or having trouble, you can also download the zip that'll give you all the files, just so you can look through the code. Or you can follow along via the commits. So if you go over here, you can see like where we are, because what we're going to do is I'm going to check this out and then go back in time and show you how it's actually built. So let's get started. I'm going to take a few minutes, get people caught up, and I'm going to shut off my, because we're going to, about 10:15, 10:20, we'll get started. So bring up my screen sign again. Okay, for anybody who is having issues getting it installed on your local, you probably want to just go ahead and use Python Anywhere. So sign up for an account, it is free. And under web, you'll want to add a new web app. And here, I'll delete this one so I can add it again. Yeah. You'll add a new web app. You'll just hit next, pick Flask, and this is important, pick the one that uses 2.7. And I'm going to change this one for the class. Change the directory. That's interesting. I haven't seen that one before. Jackie K, what OS are you on? Doesn't recognize the extension, so it looks like you downloaded something. Yeah, that might just be you downloaded it and there's a path messed up or something. Are you trying to install it using pip? Oh. No, not you, Jackie Castle. Yeah, there are two Jackie Ks. So anyway, once you have Python Anywhere running, you'll go under Files. A new folder will have been created, and ta-da! You have a little Flask app. Okay, cool. It seems like we're good to go. People are either on, have their local working, or they have Python anywhere. And we will do a whole class on like how to set up your environment, because it can be a little intimidating the first time. And there's a lot of things to remember: how to get things started, how to get things stopped, how to keep it organized. But once you get it set up, it's amazing, because it's very powerful once you get everything set up. It's not just us being curmudgeons. Right now I'm trying to figure out why this is being, why I don't have idle. Oh well. Yes, you should hear sound now. Well, I'm not going to front around with trying to get idle working. I both love and hate idle. Okay, so just a quick explanation of what I was doing there. There is an editor that comes with Python called idle, IDLE. It comes installed with Python. If you're on a Mac, you can open it using, just type idle and it'll bring it up. I like it. I'm just having issues with my environment at the moment making it work. There are more powerful ones out there, but idle comes with your everything and it does pretty much what you'd want it to do. There are two parts to idle. This part right here with little arrows, that's a shell. And that's Python listening. Actually, I think I should be able to. So one day I'll go over Flask in more detail. You're going to need a text editor of some kind to work on this class. So are you hearing echoes? Quick poll, are there people hearing echoes? You shouldn't. Sometimes if your connection isn't good, sometimes you'll hear echoes. You're going to need a text editor of some kind to work in this class, whether it's Notepad. Don't use WordPad. If you're on Windows, use Notepad. You can use Notepad++. You can, if you're familiar with Vim or Emacs, those are fine too. You just need some kind of plain text editor to work in this class. On your computer, idle should be fine. Just my setup is a little wonky at the moment. So if you're on Windows, actually idle will be an application. You can just search for it under your applications and open it. If you are on a Mac, you just open up a terminal prompt and type in idle and it'll pop up. But for today, I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently because it's not working right now. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is first clear my screen. Is I want to make a very basic Flask app. Actually, no, I wanted to do a very quick review of Python. So here we are in the Python shell. Yeah, if there's two of me, there'll be an echo. This is a Python shell, and this is basically Python waiting for us to do something. So if I do import Flask, it'll import. And if I say, 4 plus 5, 4 plus 5, it'll spit back 9. So that's the shell. It just spits information back out at you. And here are the things you're going to need to be familiar with in order to be able to work with Flask. You actually don't need a lot of advanced Python. So for example, you do need to know how to import modules because you're going to be importing stuff. So you basically do import Flask to import the Flask code. And you can also do from Flask import a thing, which is Flask. You'll often see that convention in Python where it's like from thing, import thing with same name. It just happens because developers don't think about that. You'll also need to know how to write a function. So, you define a function, you give the function a name, you give it some stuff, you do some stuff, and you can either call it. So if we do, it prints out hi, so that's a function. Also need to know how to return because we're going to be returning a lot of stuff. So return, let's make a new function, return stuff, return thing plus 2. And if we call it, and we call it with 5, it returns 7. So it returns a value. It actually spits a value back out, and it just got printed out because we didn't say what to do with it. And the usual saving variables. So you've got, your integers, your floats. You've got a list. You can have a couple items in the list. You can have a dictionary, which pairs values together. So you can pair like the string 1 with 1, 2 with 2. Now, if you're getting lost here, this is basic Python. We had another class about introduction to Python, which after this class, you may want to go back and watch because we go over all this stuff. But this is basically the minimum of what you need to know in order to work with Flask. So let's get out of here. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a temporary just little Flask website. Now, this is something that people often do, and every time I have people that come in and like, oh, it didn't work, they named the file Flask. Do not name your file Flask because it won't work. Actually, I will show you why. So I'm going to call a file. Don't do what I do. I'm going to create a file called flask.py, and I'm going to say from Flask import Flask. That's all we'll do for now. If I try to run this, I get an import error, cannot import name Flask. That's because when Python tries to import something, it has a series of places it looks. First, it looks in where it is, like in this folder. Is there something called Flask? And ta-da, there is, because there's a file called Flask. So if you do this by accident, remove everything flask.py and put a star after, just delete all of it, everything called Flask, because it's not going to work. So I'm going to create a file called run.py. So first lesson is don't call any of your files Flask, which, yeah, at the first time I did Flask, I'm like, it's not working, and I didn't even think of that. So even people have been doing this for a decade will do this. So the first line is from Flask import Flask with a capital F, so little case and then capital case. And basically, from the module Flask, we're going to import something called Flask that has all the information we need to create the website. Then we're going to need to do something that looks a little weird. App equals Flask underscore name. It's a bit of magic, but basically we're saying, okay, this is our app. We're creating a variable that will hold all the information for our application. Now we need to create something called a view. So the first thing we need to do is we'll create a function that's going to be our view. And basically the view tells what information we need to send to the web page. So we'll call it main. We don't need to send it anything. And in main, we are going to return hello world. Now, right now, this is just a function. That's all it is. In order to make it a view, we need to add something called a decorator. A decorator looks like this. It has an @ symbol and it's above a function. It basically adds functionality to a function. So it adds some extra stuff to it. In this case, we're going to make we're going to decorate it with app.route. So this is the decorator we're adding is very specific. It's basically saying this thing should now go to a web page, and the / is basically the root of your website. So if you ever go to google.com and there's nothing else after it, that's the root. That's the first thing that pops up. So app.route at the root, we're going to return hello world. Now at the bottom, we need to add a little bit more magic. This will actually might look a little familiar depending on how much Python you've done. If the name equals main app.run. Now normally, and when you would see this, what this means is that if somebody ran this file, so if somebody hasn't imported it from somewhere else, hasn't connected it to other files, they actually ran this file, this is what you need to do. Normally we say call a main function, but in this case we're saying app.run. And this is special because this is part of Flask. It says, oh, we need to start up a web server and we need to start listening and waiting for somebody to access our website. So this is our very basic Flask app, and I'm going to put this, going to copy, go over to dpaste. And dpaste is a wonderful tool that I showed off last time. And I put it in the chat. If you ever do get an error, use dpaste.com to paste it, because you can paste all the information. It basically saves bits of codes or errors or things like that for a year. Or you can have them delete in 2 days or something like that. But don't put passwords in it, don't put usernames in it, but for stuff like this, it's great. So let's go back here. I'm going to save my file. I'm going to run it. Now all you get is this running on, this weird web address, and and it waits, and that's because it's waiting for you to it's listening for people to access this website. An explanation of what this website is: this 127.0.0.1, that's localhost, that's your computer. That's where you are now. It's not out in the internet. Everybody has this address. That's home. The colon and the numbers after it are the port, because there's different ports you can listen on, and that's specifically where it's listening. So if I have a server, I can have different services running and listening like at different port. Think of this like portholes that you would look out and listen through. So let's see. Copy link address. Go over here. And look, I have hello world. And that's just your most basic Flask app, which is why I love it, because all it is just a few lines. I mean, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines if you count the lines with no actual code in it. So do we have any questions at the moment? Because there's a tiny bit of magic here. This is kind of magic-y. This is a little magic-y. But these are just two things you need to have Flask run. So are there any questions at the moment? I'm going to go to the Q&A app to see if there's anything. No questions yet. Questions? Yeah, okay. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually check out the code for the Flask class. Because what I'm going to do is step through the code so you don't have to sit there and watch me type and make stupid typos. So let's go over. Now in order to check out the code, first of all, I emptied out my directory. So I got rid of that Flask file, which this should stop. And I'm going to do something called cloning. So the command is git clone, and I have to give it an address. And I gave it the address that is given here on the website. So you can't copy this. Don't copy the one up here. Copy the one over here, the HTTPS clone URL. Why do we have underscores? Oh, if you're on Python Anywhere, you can see the output by going to your username. So mine is kcunning dot pythonanywhere.com. So the reason we have underscores instead of that's actually a convention of Python. So if you're creating something in Python, no, I didn't want to open you. Close. The convention is that you would have a variable that looks like this. So my variable name. Some languages, they do something, this is with underscores. Some do it with camel case, some languages like this. If you're from the Java world, you may be used to this. That's called camel case. In Python, this is just the convention. This is what we think looks, I personally also find it much easier to read. All lowercase with underscores. Now we can't use dashes because dash is already being used to subtract things. So if you try to do my var equals 5, you get, an error depending on where that dash is. It's a syntax error. The minus sign is used for very specific things. It's used to subtract. It might have one or two other ones in conjunction with other things, but basically that's it. That's why we use underscores. So, and with Python variable names, you can use letters, numbers, and underscores. That's it. You cannot use, like if you come from the JavaScript world, you might be used to this with the $sign. Nope, you cannot use $signs. That's just for JavaScript. JavaScript, and there's special meaning there. Hold on. So those are basically the rules of doing Python. And part of it's style, and part of it is just, that there are variable names that are not going to work for characters. So good question. Let's see, let's go back. No. We'll get out of here. Now let's talk about cloning. When you git clone something, you're basically pulling down all the files and all the history. So I'm going to git clone. And if I see what's in the directory, I see I have something called Flask class. And I can go into Flask class. Hold on a sec. Okay. So if we look, we can see that now we have all these files that are, and that's the latest. Whenever you check it out, you're checking out the latest. But I can do git log if I do one line, because otherwise it's like nasty. You get a list of things like these funny numbers and then a description. These are my check-ins. Now, these are my very conscientious check-ins that I knew that I was going to show these to people later on. So I'm trying to make them very clear. I will warn you, if you look at other projects, it's not unusual to get check-ins that are basically, strings of curse words. Catherine, can you paste your traceback in dpaste.com? Name not defined. You might have forgot. Oh, the underscores are double underscores, by the way. But go ahead and paste the full traceback, which the traceback is an error, basically. And you want to take the whole thing and copy it. So basically what these are, you can use these, the funny numbers, to check out the code at that point in history. So here was my initial commit. Adding the most basic files is here. So if I go here, git checkout, and then use those numbers, you get a bunch of text like you're in a detached head state. You can create a branch off of this, whatever. Gives you some instructions, and it tells you where you are now. So if I do an ls, you'll notice that there's fewer things. And if I do more, now here I've set up things a little differently because you don't want everything to be in one file. So this looks a little bit different because here we had everything in one file, but you don't really want to organize your code that way because it can get super hairy after a while. Now I have done a few quickie Flask sites where I didn't set up everything where it should because I knew it wasn't going to be that big. But as your site grows, you're going to want it to be more organized, because if you have to go in and try to edit disorganized code, read disorganized code, it's horrible. And even if you think, oh, I'm never going to share this code with anybody else ever, future you is another person, and you're not going to remember why you had everything in one file. So here, all I do is my run.py has from app import app, which seems weird, and then app.run debug equals true. And this basically, when you run, now we're going to get more errors, or when we get an error, it'll be more clear about what's going on. And you see here, we have a folder called app. If we go into app, we see we have two files. One is called init.py and one is called views.py. So what's in init.py? In init.py, we have basically we're initializing Flask. Now, when you see init.py, and by the way, init.py always has two underscores, double underscores before and after. So, sorry, where was it? If you see, you'll see these in Python projects quite a bit. And basically what it says is, hey, can you treat this folder as a module? So you need to go, when you find this folder, you need to go and use everything in here. So here I'm setting up Flask. From Flask, import Flask. This is just like it was before. The app, we're creating the Flask app. And then from app, import views. This is going to take all the code from views, which is in this folder that we are in, and it's going to import them. Yeah, the chat room is not VI. Okay. So here we have our views file. And here we are importing the app. And we have app.route. So this should look a little familiar. We just broke it apart in different files because our app is going to grow. We're going to create more pages and we're going to want everything to be kind of organized nicely. So here we have a new we have a new view. So app.route, this is our base view. It's called lucky static, and it's just going to return your lucky number is 7. So if I go into the folder where there's run.py and run it, I can go over here. There it is. Going to get rid of some windows real fast. I'm going to reload it, and it says your lucky number is 7. So this is basically the same thing as we had before, but everything's broken out. It seems like a lot of work, but this is how it should be set up according to the Flask community. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up, because remember I went back in time. I'm going back forward so I can go to the next step. And we are going to add, no wait, we are going to add a template. So let's see what's in here now. So now if we go into app, we see that there's a few files that have been added. We still have views, we still have the init. Actually, one thing we can do if you've got Git working, is do a git diff. So what I did is I'm checking against the last check-in, and we can see what's different. So as you can see, we have added a template. Now a template is an HTML file, and what you can do with templates is that you can use them to combine to make web pages, and you can also stick information in them. So here we have a very basic template. Right now it's just a simple HTML file. You've got your HTML, your body, welcome to your lucky number generator. Your lucky number is 5. And the views, I've added a new view. And it's app.route. If you go to your site/TPL, we return render template, and we tell what template. We also had to import that. So if you look at where we imported, like from app import app, we also added from Flask import render template. So this is a new function, and we actually return the function, which can seem kind of weird to new developers, but you can pass around functions just like you can pass around like integers. They're just things. Python just considers them all things. It's kind of weird when you first start doing it, but you get used to it because if you work in web development, you see this a lot, that you return a function with a bunch of stuff in it that then is sent to the application, and the application knows what to do with it. So in this case, it's actually going to render a template. So we're going to run. going to go back here. Now this isn't doing anything different if we just go to our base of our website, but if we go to here, TPL, you can see we have welcome to your lucky number generator. Your lucky number is 5. So it took our template and it just rendered it. It just said, okay, here's the HTML. Now at this point, there's no logic, there's no values, it's just HTML that we're serving up, which actually can be useful. If you just have some HTML you need to throw up, this can be a good way to just throw a web page up. So let's see, delete you. So that's pretty easy. Now, are there any questions about templates? I'm going to check up. If we're on Python Anywhere, where can we see the output? I answered that, but I'm going to answer it again really quick. So if you go on Python Anywhere, you can go to yourusername.pythonanywhere.com, and that's your website. You'll be able to see the output there. Every time you make a change, you need to be careful that you need to reload your Python Anywhere, so where you're editing it, you would actually need to click reload, like yourusername.pythonanywhere.com. Significance of the plus sign? Oh, the plus and the minus. You're not going to see any minuses yet, but the plus just means code was added, that these lines were added. So now being able to render templates is great and all, but we want to send information to those templates so that we can actually make them useful. So I'm going to check out master again. My poor little head keeps getting in the way. There. Git check out master. Let's look at all the different options we have. Now we're going to start using variables in our templates. And let's see what's different. So here we have what's different. And here you'll notice there's a little minus sign right here. That means I removed that line. So here we have our HTML, and I removed the line where it says 5. And I added this line where it's a paragraph and it has curly braces. 2 curly braces, some text, and then some curly braces. Now what this is this is where Flask will know to insert a value. It's going to expect that we're going to send this value to this template and that it will stick that value there. So look for something called lucky num. Now if we go down, you can see I've edited the view, lucky TPL, and I removed the line where it says return render template simple.html. I added a line where lucky is equal to 6, and I return render template simple HTML lucky num equals lucky num. Why is that not? Hold on. It's scrolling off the screen, but here, I'll show it to you in the file. So if you look at the last line here, we return render template simple HTML lucky number equals lucky num equals lucky num. So we're basically telling Flask that, hey, I want you to render this template and send it these values. And here we only have one value. So let's run it and bring up our website again. Now if we run it, you get your lucky number is 6 because we actually sent the value 6 to the template and it inserted it. So at the end of the day, it just basically Flask went and said, here's the template I have, here's the values I have, munch it all together, and spits out a web page. Now let's see. Now here we add Bootstrap. And let's see what this does. Now, does everybody know what Bootstrap is? Bootstrap is an excellent project that I highly recommend. If you want to do web development, look it up. Here we go. It's assigning. If there's only one equal sign, it's assigning. So here we have Bootstrap, and Bootstrap is not Python. Bootstrap is about HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And it's basically a way for, if you're not a web designer, to make your website look pretty decent without having to do anything. I love it personally. So if you're not a web developer, you can just add it. You don't even have to download the files. I think I downloaded the files for this class. I'll have to double check. You can just, there's a link where it says, hey, here's the link to, it's stored up in Google, and you can just link to that. So, and it basically goes and it styles a bunch of stuff that normally, I forget about, or it just makes it automatically look nice, which is nice when you're doing web development. So, let's see what the diff is. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. My apologies. I thought I was skipping ahead a bit. So what we're doing now is this is basically to prove that, this is just Python. One of the things that I love about Flask is that it's just Python. If you work in Django, you can start to feel like, okay, I'm working in Django and not really Python. It doesn't feel, pure is the word a lot of Python developers use, but it can just feel like, okay, I'm not working really in Python. You really feel this way if you work in something like Plone. But with Flask, you can use all the things that you use with Python, and you can just import them and use them, and you can even just decorate functions, and as long as you're returning values, you can make websites. So here, I have added to views a line from random import randint. And from the last class, we learned that randint will basically give you a random number between like whatever and whatever, between two values. We've removed your lucky number is 7. We actually removed the whole template, view because we don't need that anymore. We set lucky number to be equal to a random integer between 1 and 10, and we're going to return the template and the lucky number. So let's run this. Come on. Oh, fine. And as you can see, now I went to the base set. I'm not using the TPL thing anymore. We know we need to use templates. We have 127. We have, welcome to your lucky number generator. Your lucky number is 9. If we hit reload, it's 10, 1, 8, 6, 3. So every time I load this web page up, I'm going to get a different number. So you can just use Python. That's one of the great things. So let's see. Oh, and by the way, here you'll see every time I loaded the page, I got a little thing right here. It's basically 200 is basically everything's fine. But every time you load the page, you're going to get some information that, hey, somebody loaded the page at this time, whatever. Normally this would go into a log file, but since we're just developing, all this goes into our console. And checking. Sorry, got a ping. Okay. All right. Now here, we are going to add another view. So let me explain a little bit about what's going on here, and then we're going to take a short break. Here, I have added a new view called Max. Now, one thing you'll notice, it's not just some text, it's in angle brackets. So it's the angle brackets like this, and it has a value in it. Well, that's a way for us to actually send information to the view. And that is going to be, so basically whatever value is between these two um, these two slashes is going to be saved into a parameter and sent to the function. So we have something called max. Now this is expecting something called max. Our function is expecting max. And we're going to set a lucky number that is a random integer between 1 and the integer value of max. Because by the way, whatever is passed in is a string, so you need to convert it. So we return render template, simple HTML, and the lucky number is equal to the lucky number. So let's run that. Now we never got rid of this. That still works, but we want to go to max. So we type in, let's see, our max number is 100. It says 9, 26, 11, 55, 45, 77, 29. So as you can see, I can get like, I can get between 1 and whatever number I put in here. I can make it like, 1,000. If I keep reloading, I get bigger numbers. Wonder how big I can go. So see, there you go. Now, does anybody have any questions about that? So we've basically gone over how to create a template, how to, just say, hey, use this template, how to send information to the template, and how to use the URL to actually get information into the template. So we've gone over 3 things so far. And I'm going to take a quick break because I need some water and maybe some more coffee, and I'll be back in at 11:10. All right, I'm back. So let's see. Let's move on to the next bit. So we added a max view. Now the next thing we're going to do is add a loop. And then we're not going to add a loop to Python. We're actually going to add a loop to a template. So in templates, you can actually, oh my, this is scrolling off the screen. So I'm just going to open this file. So in with templates, you can actually add not only values, but you can add logic and like flow control. So here I have a loop. Now this is the beginning of the loop. Now if you're used to Python, you're used to just making a block, and just like at the end of the block, that's the end of the for loop. You can't really do that with templates because templates don't care about white space. So to start, we have a curly bracket and a percent sign. That means I have some kind of functionality that I would like to do here. You say for some variable in a list, so game nums is going to be a list, print out that variable, which we've called num, and then we actually have to end the for loop. So we write end for. So we've got curly bracket, percent sign, end for, and then percent sign, curly bracket. And let's run this. Oh, actually, I need to figure out what I need to go to. Game, okay. I'm sorry. For some reason, it didn't print out this part. Okay, so I added two things. First of all, I updated the template. I added a template, and then I added a new view. And this view is going to be called game. So when we go to game, we're going to call this function. We create an empty array called game nums. While the length of game nums is less than 5, we are going to get a random number, random integer. And if that number is not already in game nums, we're going to append it. So we're going to add it to the list. Then we're going to return render template. So we're going to render a template, game HTML, and the game nums equals game nums. So let's run it. And this time we're going to go to game. So you can see the winning numbers are 96243. We have 45172. You can reload it and you'll keep getting 5 different numbers. So it's kind of like a lottery game. Now you can have a bunch of templates, like you can actually create a template for each view if you want, but that is going to recreate, like you're going to expend a lot of effort that you don't need to. You're just going to basically do it repeatedly. And let's bring my face back up. So hi. So what we're going to do here, no, come back. Get over here. Stay on top. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to add a base template, because what you can do is you can create a base template and then insert little bits of HTML into it, and you can inherit it. So you might have, say, your navigation is in one file, your footer is in another file, You have different games that can be inserted, in different files, and you have the base of your HTML as in another file. So let's compare it to the last check-in. So here I've created something called base.html. It's basically an HTML tag, a body tag, and then it creates a block. So block content. Sorry, I'm seeing what people are tweeting at me. Okay, good. So we have the usual curly bracket %, block, and then its name is content. So block content, and then we have an end block. We can stick stuff in here. Now here, we've changed the game file. We've removed pretty much everything. We took everything out. Then we added a line, extends base.html. So Python's going to find base.html, and it's going to load that up first. It's going to go, okay, we're going to be extending this. And it's going to look to see what blocks we're going to insert things into. So in base.html, we had an empty block called content. Here, we've created a block called content that basically says, take this stuff and stick it there. So it's kind of like one of those kid puzzles where you have, where you take out like the little animals and there are animal shapes left. Well, this is like that. Base.html is the wooden board, and the little wooden animals that stick in there are all the different blocks that can go in. So here we have our block content. We've got a header, welcome to the game, paragraph the winning numbers, and it prints out the numbers. And then we end the block, so we do have to declare when the block ends. Let me just make sure I got through everything. Okay. So let's see. Python run.py. If we reload, it looks exactly the same because it basically is the same thing. It's an HTML page with some stuff inserted, but we've put it into 2 different files, so it's actually easier for us to kind of cope with now. This is another design thing. You don't want to make a bunch of different HTML files. So let's go ahead and add another block. Oh, no, we're going to add CSS, sorry. Now, I did say I would talk about Bootstrap, talked about it a little before. Bootstrap, oh my God, phone is going crazy. So before we talked about Bootstrap, and Bootstrap is basically, it's created by Twitter, and it's a way for you to add a lot of styles to your site without a lot of effort. So we've added Bootstrap. Now, if I show you the diff for this one, it's going to be crazy because I think I ended up actually importing the files for some reason. Like actually adding them. So yeah, it's crazy. There's all this stuff. Don't worry about it. What you should worry about is base.html. So let's look at app, templates. I think it was base.html got edited. So here we have what's important. We added a style sheet, and the style sheet holds all the styles, which basically says, make this blue, make this red, use this font, use this background, put padding around the things. And I'm just using bootstrap.css. And honestly, with this, I didn't even need to add all of the like CSS. You can actually just link to it off of Google. So let's go ahead and run it, and let's see how it looks different. It looks so much nicer. Okay, it's a little difference, but it's really nice. And one of the nice things about it, and Danish, you were asking about this, Bootstrap is responsive. You do have to add the JavaScript to make it fully responsive, but you're just linking to a file. So if you create a Bootstrap site, it'll work on tablets, it'll work on cell phones. It works great. And let me bring up an example so you can kind of see what this means. So as you see, as it's wide, you see we've got this nice navigation, but as you get narrower, which is what your phone would do, you get little drop downs, things reorder so that it looks really nice no matter how wide your screen is. So that's Bootstrap. Bootstrap is great. I would use it. So now we have Bootstrap, so it looks nicer. This is just, you know, a little aside. I tend to these days just add Bootstrap right up front, just so everything looks nice from the beginning. So let's see, we added Bootstrap. Now let's add another block to our template. So here, we've added another block. We're in base.html, as you can see here. And we've added another block. We have block content, and then in a div, we've called, you know, the span, which is a bootstrappy thing. We have two more blocks, block page title, block content. If we go down to game, we no longer have everything stuck in block content. We have the page title is its own block, and content is its own block. So now instead of one block, we have two blocks. So the page title goes in one block and the content goes in another block. This is another way it makes it really easy to keep your HTML files organized internally, because it's very clear to somebody coming in if you say, hey, make a change to the header. They're like, oh, this block is called header. I need to make my changes here. So we'll run this. And it did move it over. That was the class span 9 that basically says, yeah, fit it in this kind of size area. So it moved it over a bit, but otherwise doesn't look any different. This is all about internal organization. So let's see, we have added another block. Now let's talk about requirements files. Now, when you create a website, you're programming on your local and you're like, oh, everything's great and I'm doing all this awesome stuff and it's wonderful. And at some point you need to like move all that stuff like to another place. So onto a server or onto a friend's computer, or you got a new computer and you've got to move it over. Well, the problem is when you've installed all these things, and this happened to me so often in the past that I would be running along and I'm like, oh, this is a cool module. I'll add this, you know, I'll add this. You can start to forget what you need to actually have installed. And it became really hard to get my stuff running on other people's computers or servers. I had to like run it and then wait for the error, and it's like, cannot find this. Okay, what was that? What module was that from? Oh, it was from this module. Okay, install that. And you keep, you know, it's just this endless cycle. Don't do what I did. Make a requirements file. So let's so here is the difference. Only thing I did is I added a file called requirements.txt. And this actually comes from pip. This is one of the places where pip is awesome. So even if you didn't get pip installed today, we'll get it installed, you know, sometime in the next like month or so. I'll do just a total install fest. So the way you get this file is on your local, you would do pip, I think it's pip freeze, maybe the 2 dashes, no, it's pip freeze. And all that does is it spits out everything that's installed. So it tells you like, hey, you have Flask, you have Jinja, you have Markup Safe, WorkZerg, argparse, It's Dangerous, and WSGI-Ref. So if I wanted to install this on somebody else's computer, I know what's installed. Now, one of the great things about this is that you can save this to a file like I did to see I have requirements.txt, and I can do pip install, but instead of saying, oh, pip install, Flask, I would say pip install -r requirements.txt, so my text file that holds everything. If I hit enter, it will actually go through each one of these and install. And it goes and installs everything. So if you have this in your program, Jinja is just a template thing. It's the thing that renders templates. And you actually, if you learn Jinja for Flask, you will know Jinja is used with almost every Python project I've run across. So it's very popular. Django uses it. I think Plone uses it. Pretty sure that like all the rest of them do. So if you learn, Jinja here, and they all run pretty much the same. So these are all the things that are required for everything to work, and it just went ahead and installed everything. So if I needed to install this really quick on somebody else's machine, I could do that. It'd be super easy. And the more complex your projects are, the more likely you are to need this. I've worked with requirements files that are hundreds of lines long, and we could not have managed that project without it. So going back to master. Now let's see, we're at 11:27. How long does this run? Just checking calendar. I forgot whether we ran till 11:30 or 12:30. Okay, we run till 12:30. Cool. So now we're going to add a form to nowhere. And that just means it's a form that we've added and it doesn't do anything. app.fromObjectConfig. I wonder why I added that. That's just some configuration magic that I must have added. It's one of those lines you add like once and you don't really think about. So here, I'm adding a form. So basically I had to add something to the actual like init.py so that I know to go and grab some config information. So in forms.py, so I've added a new file. From Flask, import from flask.stuff, we're going to import form so we can create forms. From WT forms, import text field and Boolean field, so you can import different kinds of fields. And then we imported from validators something called required, so we can say whether a field is required or not. Like a comment form where your name is required and the comment is required, but your email address is not. And we have a class. So we're actually creating an object that's going to be our form. So class, we're calling the form getLucky, and we're basing it off of form. This may seem like a little advanced because we didn't cover this kind of stuff under the last class, but this is something you'll see quite often where you're just creating a new kind of thing. You're adding your own like stuff to it. So we're creating a form and we're going to add some values to it. So we've created something called a form. We're going to call our kind of form getLucky, and the field is going to be that we're going to add to it is numbers, and it's a text field and with some text called numbers. In views, we're importing from forms getLucky, and we are adding a new view. Now this is a lot of stuff all at once. It'll all kind of come together. So we're routing to nums. This is the address that we'll go to. And the methods are get and post, because there's two different kinds of methods when you're working with web pages. Like how the information is getting to it, like you're grabbing the information from it, you're posting to it. So those are just the methods that we're allowing on this web page. It's a little more advanced, but it makes sense as you start working with forms and understanding, okay, the data has to go somewhere. So our form is get lucky, and we return render template, get lucky, and the form is equal to the form. So we obviously now need to get a new template out there. So these were some things that I had to add to a file called config.py. These are basically security things that you just have to do because Flask won't let you run insecure. One day we'll talk about what CSRF is, but basically it's a way to exploit websites and forms all over the internet, and it's really bad. And I got hit by one of those at a former gig, and it was not a good thing. Spammers were using our form to send email all over the internet. It was crazy. Now I think that this actually will not work because I think I actually forgot one thing. Although let's try it. Because I just have a feeling. So let's see. Game works, but we want to go to nums. And we got an exception because we didn't make the template. So if you say, I want to use the template, use this template, you'd better have the template. But we don't have that template. So I have a feeling that was in the next checkout. So yep, and look at my comment. Adding a form, forgot the template. So let's go ahead and check that out. So here's the template. And we're going to extend base.html. The title is going to be Lucky Number Game. And in the content, we're going to create a form. So the form action is just what's it going to do? It's not doing anything. It's a form to nowhere. The method is post, and the name of the form is get lucky. We have a hidden tag. This is a security thing. We have a label, which is the text that'll show lucky numbers for a form. So we've got the form field numbers, and you'll see these are in just the curly brackets, sorry, starting to fade out. And then we're going to submit it. So at this point, it should work. Let's see. Okay, before we got this error, yay! So we can put numbers in here. 56252. Submit the query. It doesn't do anything because it literally just loads the page again and says you didn't tell me what to do, so I guess I'll just, come back here. So that's, you need to get all that stuff in place to do a form, because once you start taking input from the user, things start getting complicated. You'll notice like everything was like, oh, add this line, add this line. Once you start actually talking to the user and getting information from them, things start to get complicated because you have to protect yourself. People are bad. They're the worst thing that can happen to your system because they're going to break everything. And so this is a lot of this stuff is to make sure that hackers, can't get into your system and screw with it, that they can't, use it to send, spam to some other place, that they can't exploit it. That's what a lot of this stuff that you see going up, that I'm just like, that's security, that's security. So let's go on. I'm going to go back and check out master because we want to do something with this form. I mean, it's nice and all, but so let's actually do something with those numbers. Oops. And let's see what the difference is. So here we've edited game.html, and we still have the winning numbers are blah, but now we have a new thing. We're actually sending another value to game.html, and it says your numbers are, and then player nums. So we're apparently sending another value to it. Here, from Flask import render template, we're also rendering request, which means sending information to like another page. That request is how we pull the information out that was sent to us. So here we have a new function. Now this is just a naked function because you can still have just naked functions that do things. We have def get game nums, where the number num equals 5 and the max equals 10. We have a blank. We have an empty array. While the length of game nums is less than whatever number was sent, we get a bunch of random numbers and we return the game numbers. Now when we go to game nums equals get game nums. So it'll actually go and get, that's how we're getting the random numbers. It's the same thing as before pretty much. Now in get nums, when we go to nums, if the method equals post. So post is basically meant somebody hit submit, we got a request, we have to do something. So the numbers is going to get from the form that we declared, the field called numbers, we want the data, what was entered. The game nums are going to equal the get game nums. Then we're going to return render template game.html, game nums equals game nums, and the player nums equals numbers. Now, if the request method equals get, meaning someone just loaded the page, they're not, they haven't asked to do anything yet, then we just return get lucky, where we're just going to return like, hey, give us some numbers. So as you can see with this, there's two options depending on how you got to that page. So let's go ahead and run it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just got a loud noise in my headphones because Ubuntu didn't like me hitting reload. So here we just loaded up the page and we get a form. So our lucky numbers, let's say our lucky numbers are 2, 5, 7, 4, and 1. We can submit it. When we submit it, then we get a different, it says, okay, you sent me information. The winning numbers are 3, 1, 7, 8, 5. Your numbers were 2, 5, 7, 4, 1. So it actually took my information from the form and got it out and then put it up on the page. So that's what all that stuff did. Now, do we have any questions about that? I don't see any questions in the Q&A. Don't see any here. And yeah, the double at is just part of the diff. Now we actually want the game to run. Like it should actually do something interesting besides posting, the numbers. So let's go ahead and, make it actually do something. So first to game.html, I just added wins, paragraph and some value wins that we'll be sending to the template. Danish, there's no database. Here in views.py, we've added some lines. So nums equals numbers.split. Now, what is this doing? I'll show you this real fast to explain what it's doing. So basically what we've sent is a string, just the text of the values that were in the form. So let's say that our numbers were 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So that's just a string of numbers. You can use split to turn it into an array. So that's what that was doing. Split's very useful, and you can actually even like put different values in it if you need to split by something else, but that's what this is doing. So we're getting an array and we're storing it into nums. We're setting wins to 0. For every number in nums, if the integer value of nums, so we have to convert it because it's still a string. In game nums, if it's in the game nums, we add 1 to win. So if the number that the player, put in is actually in that list, then we add 1 to wins. And then we return render template, and we're adding wins. So let's run this. Okay, so let's get some lucky numbers. 2, 6, 4, 8, and 3. And I won twice because 2 was not in there, 6 was not in there, 4 was in there, 8 was in there, 3 was not. Now if I try to reload, oh, I guess it does work. Yeah, there might be some scrolling around if you don't want them to reload. But if I hit enter and I don't think any of these should win. Like that, there's obviously no matchup because they're all too large. So I had 0 wins. So it's now actually a game. It's now actually a functioning game. So let's see. So let's talk about some custom validation. Because one of the things, we're not actually validating anything. Like you can put anything in there and that can break your program. Because whenever you get information from the user, you want to validate it. You want to validate and make sure that email addresses are valid, that their age is actually a number that makes sense, that the date they're entering makes sense. You don't want nasty data to end up on your website because you don't want it running through your program or getting into your database or whatever. You don't want that to happen. So you do want to check everything that the user gives you. So let's build a validator. So here, to our getLucky form, we've added a method, which is basically a function within a class, within an object. And it's called validate. So first, we take the numbers and we split them. Now you notice I use self here. Self just means on this form, on me. I set valid to true for every number and numbers if not num is digit. So this means if the number is not a digit, or if, yeah, I wanted to make sure it was a digit. So if it is not a digit, then set valid to false. If the length of the numbers does not equal 3, set valid to false and return valid. So if we basically violate either of those things, so everything has to be a number, and the length of numbers cannot equal 3. Like they can't be too long. They have to be like short. Or no, the number of numbers. Then we have to return false. So you can check for all kinds of things. You can check to see if, if a person lives in the country where you can ship to, if, a zip code is valid, that kind of stuff. So always check everything. Never trust the user. And here I rewrote if form validate on submit. So if we, are validating, if the request is equal to post, we're going to just do everything we were doing above. It's the same thing. but we're doing it basically now we're actually validating. So first, load it up. Let me see. 12, 10, 4, 2. So that should be fine. Now what happens if I say 5, 6, 2? It won't go anywhere. Now it's not actually telling me any errors, which is bad. If you want to check your users, but you also want to be kind to them and say, look, you screwed up. But at least it's not actually hitting any logic. It's just saying, nah. And I think this, let's see, 2, choose one with 5 numbers. And that's not going to submit. We need 3 numbers. If you only put in 1 number, it's not going to go anywhere. So now we have 3 rules. We have 2 rules. Everything needs to be a number, and we can only accept 3 numbers. So it's a pick 3. We've basically written a pick 3. Now, are there any questions about that? Does everybody understand why you would need to validate? So here, I'm actually going to be kind to the user and add some errors to go with the validation. So, no, I didn't want to do any of that. Okay, git checkout. And let's see, I don't want to check out the one before because I did a bunch of things, statting random things. We'll check out from here. So let's see what we added. So here, in validate, we've added another array called errors. It's an empty list. So every time you find a number that doesn't work, we append one of the items doesn't work. If the length of the numbers does not equal to 3, we append you may submit exactly 3 numbers. Then we set the errors that numbers okay, so this is the form, self is the form, numbers is the actual field, and now we've actually added some errors to that field. And we add a tuple, which is a list that you can't change, and things that go together normally go in them. So we're basically converting our list into a tuple, which is a kind of list. Then we're going to add to the get lucky form 4 field and form errors. So for every field and for every error that we get, for every error for that field, we're going to put out an alert that says, sorry, this isn't right. We're actually going to print out the error. So let's run this. We'll start fresh. So first we'll do too few. We'll just do 1. Error, you may submit exactly 3 numbers. Okay, we'll submit 1, 4, and 5. One of the items is not a number. 1, 4, 5, 6. You may submit exactly 3 numbers. 1, 4, 5, 6, 2. Yeah, so now we get 2 errors. One of the items is not a number. You may submit exactly 3 numbers. So let's just do 1, 4, 5. Let's see if it'll like us now. No. And that works. So that's how you get errors into your forms. At this point, I've run through all the code that I have. I must have been speaking very quickly and I didn't have to lean over anybody's screen, so I moved quite quickly. So let's talk about where you can go from here. Now, I said that, we're not doing databases this time because we'd have to go over installing SQLite and SQL Alchemy and all this other stuff. You can, however, use Flask and databases. If you want to do that, if that's your thing, I would highly recommend checking out the Mega Flask tutorial by this guy. And I'm going to add this to give me a sec. It's posting on the showcase. Okay. This is the Mega Flask tutorial. This is how I picked up Flask when I decided I wanted to learn it. I basically went through one by one everything that is here. It's a very thorough guide to Flask. It goes through database and user logins and all kinds of stuff. So this one actually, did he make a? I thought he made a blog, but maybe he made something else. But yes, this is an amazing resource. It's all free, but he also wrote a book, which is quite good, which I would recommend if you're really interested in Flask, picking it up. I think I even have a copy somewhere. And I'll see if I can get O'Reilly to send us some. But he also has a video out there if you have access to Safari Online, or these are usually pretty expensive. But yeah, this is where I would go if you want to learn about that. Now, a warning about databases. If you just have a very simple site with a simple database that you're interested in accessing, that's great. When you start getting into things like, I want to deal with users and groups and all this other stuff, you might consider going and looking at Django at that point, because Django deals with users rather well. If you need to have like users in your database. So just, consider that going forward. So let's see. This is a resource I would definitely check out. And actually, one thing I used last time for the last class, it's this little thing. It's a silly little Flask app, and I will show you the code for it right now. So let me get out of here. Control C. See, it's somewhere in here. Let's see, one page, I think. All right. So this is basically called one page. I had a problem with the last class that I was like, oh crap, sometimes I need to leave the computer, and I wanted to leave a sign up on my screen, and that just says I'll be back in 10 minutes or something silly. And it was one of those I cannot believe nobody has actually written this stupid thing before. But really, I looked around, I could not find anybody who had written this one simple thing. So here I have a very simple app that I wrote up, and it's all in one, one file because I knew it was going to be small. So I import OS, which is basically I need to interact with the operating system. I'm using Flask and render template, setting up Flask. And I'm going to go down here to the very bottom first. So when you go to the base of the site, it says you have to give me something. And here, I'm going to give you the link here, because I actually deployed this to Heroku, and we'll talk about deployment in a sec. So I've already added that to bottom. It just says be back at 11:10. So if you go to just the base of the site, it says you have to give me something. I probably should put something a little more friendly here, and I will super soon. But it just says, I need something to show. Now, if you just do this, so if you just have / some stuff /, all it will do is it'll basically render the template base.html with the text as that text. So it's going to send that text to some template and display it. Now, of course, this was actually all I wrote at first. But one of the things when you're a developer, you often think, but how can I add a little bit more to it? And I decided that I really, really wanted it to be pretty and use Google Fonts. So I decided I wanted to be able to pick a font when I uploaded it. So then I created a second view. Now with this one, the first thing we send is a font, the name of a font. The second thing we send is the text. So if I send two things, Flask knows, now we need to actually do this other view. So this is called print text with font. We're sending it a font and some text, and we return the render template base.html. The text is equal to the text. The font link equals the font replace. And if this looks funny, let me show you what this does really fast. So there I had replace. So let's say I have my string is hello world, how are you? S dot replace. The first thing I send it is going to be the thing I'm replacing. The second thing I send it is what I'm replacing it with. So it basically spits out a string that instead of spaces, it has underscores. And the reason I had to do this was because Google was expecting plus signs. So let's go back over here. Basically, I take the font name, take out the spaces, put in plus signs, and then the font is equal to the font, because I would need that too. I needed both of them. And I never got around to doing the colored font, so I'm not even sure if that works. I got halfway through it and then said, no, this is getting crazy. Now, if we look at the templates, so based on HTML, if you look at it, I have HTML, I have a head. Now here, let me move my face down. Here, instead of linking to a style sheet that's stored somewhere, I just said screw it and grab the file off of a CDN, which is basically a place that hosts files and has them. They're super fast because they're all over the world, and it picks the fastest one depending on where you are. So I basically went and grabbed the Bootstrap CSS from there. Added an optional theme for some reason. I felt like it. Added the JavaScript that's required for Bootstrap if you want it to work exactly like how you'd want it to work. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and VI. So this is the JavaScript that you would just require for it to work if you really want it. So if I am sent a font, so if I actually got a font, then I'm going to link to this file on Google Fonts, which are great, by the way. And I'm basically going to get that font and import it so I can use it. Set some styles. So if there's a font, I added a style that basically sets the font. So font family is this font. And then here I have header, text center, some text. So Python one page, let's run this. So here it says you have to give me something. And if we say BRB, it just prints out BRB in the center. It looks nice, nice formatted. But if I go to, let's go to Google Fonts, which by the way is an awesome site. I love Google Fonts because you can basically use them. You can download them and use them. Let's find a nice one. We'll use this one, Montserrat. Oh, no, didn't want to do that. Close. Montserrat. I added that font in, and it changed the font. So now I have a different font that I can use. And that's the silly little app, and it's very short. It's just solving a tiny problem that I had, but it worked, and I ended up deploying it to Roku. So let's talk about deploying really fast. So there's a few options. First we went over is that you can go to Python Anywhere. And Python Anywhere is great. You can deploy stuff if you don't need a custom URL, if it's what you're deploying is very simple, Python Anywhere will work just fine. And I even think it can add, you may be able to add, oh, databases, yeah. So you can actually add a database. So you can create a database. It doesn't use SQL, it uses MySQL, so you'll have to like look up the differences. But you can even add like a database, which is great. Another option is Heroku. And by the way, Jackie or anybody else, if you can think of any other hosting options, start shouting them out in chat. Heroku.com is another one that I love. This is another focus on the app kind of thing. You can go in and, you know, sign up, and what you'll want to look for is install instructions, you know, Heroku Flask, and they'll give you the install instructions, like how do you install Heroku on Flask. Now you do need to install stuff on your computer. So like here, you basically create a file. You install Heroku and on your local machine, and you create a file called a proc file. And let me look at my proc file. And it's one line, and it basically says, I want to deploy a website. It's called this, and here's some more information. This was copy and pasted from their instructions, and it worked. So basically, you would run that proc file, and it would look at everything you have, and it would deploy it. And there's a couple other different ways to deploy it, but this is one of the ways. Let's see, those are managed services. Those are places where, like, for example, if you go on to Python Anywhere, you're limited because they're like, okay, you have to use this version of Flask, and that's it. I believe Heroku is more, you know, flexible. So, you know, this doesn't seem like a big deal now because you're probably going to learn on the latest. It can become a big deal later on if they update, and all of a sudden, you know, your code doesn't work and you have to update your code. I've been through this. It's, you know, it can be a problem. So another option is Rackspace. Now, if you go to Rackspace, you have to know servers. So if you're comfortable, like our Linux person who's on a Linux machine, you may be comfortable. You have to be comfortable with servers and managing your own stuff. But then again, you are also in control. So you don't have somebody else upgrading your stuff without telling you. But you do have to be your own sysadmin. So that's more of an advanced option. I do recommend everybody at least try getting like a little Rackspace box or even a like Amazon box and learning how to administer their own box, because at one point you learn a lot doing it yourself, and you're going to do it wrong the first few times, and that's okay. But you eventually get used to it, and you eventually you can troubleshoot more easily. So it's very important to understand how these boxes work, because if you do web development, that's where they live, and you have to understand them. Otherwise, you drive your sysadmins crazy. And I know because I'm married to one, and he complains about developers all the time. So, you know, do me a favor and be a good developer and know how to like administer your own boxes, even if you're not going to do it as a career. So let's see. Now I'm going to do a real quick Google search to see if there's any I have forgotten. Flask hosting. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, honestly, your best bet is going to be Python Anywhere. And they'll even run you through like a nice tutorial if you need a review. You can just run through it again. Now, as for where to go from here, I recommend check out the Flask Mega tutorial and run through that, because you can, so run through that because it will teach you, once again, about web forms, about users, about doing search. You make a really robust app by the end of it. And while it's not something that you might want to go and deploy, you're going to learn a lot and you're going to get ideas as you go along. Some ideas for things that I would recommend people just check out and play with. Making a to-do list is one, a very simple to-do list. is something that, and actually what's fun with that, if you learn that, and then you go back and you learn something like jQuery or Angular, JS. Yeah, I know devs complain about sysadmins too. um, but if you go and learn those, then you can start making this really cool interactive like app. Another thing you might want to learn is like, okay, how do you spit out JSON? So if you've ever used an API, it spits out like, JSON, like Pokey API, which I'm going to bring up because that's the one I always go to, because it's always up and always has stuff. So this is basically an API that holds everything you'd ever want to know about Pokemon, if that's important to you, as it should be. And so this is JSON, which is basically JSON is a dictionary. So it spits out dictionaries of information that you can then import and use. So how could you take some information and spit it out? As I said, everybody should make a crappy blog app at some point in their life. My first blog app, if you don't want to use a database, was actually just text files that I would write text files out, and then my PHP site from back in the day would go and read the text file and insert it into a web page, and boom, I had like, a blog. So that might be something that you could, work with. When would I use Django over Flask? Um, hey, I've got kids. um, so when would I use Django over Flask? I would use Django if I knew that the application I was creating was going to start getting complicated. I would also use it if there was something in the Django world that I wanted to use that was very well maintained. For example, where I'm working now, I'm creating an API. I could technically just do this with Flask, but I really want to use the Django REST framework because it's robust, it's well maintained, it's well tested, everybody's used it. So that's when I would use it. I tend to use Flask to solve small problems, like small annoying problems, like that are encapsulated, like my little screen sign. No, no, no. Like the little screen sign thing was just something that was annoying me. Um, I would use it to make something simple like a to-do list where, you know, I didn't really want this huge database with all these tables and all the stuff I have to maintain. I would use it if I was talking to an API. So if I was talking to, for example, the Pokey API, and I was pulling in information, and actually, I wonder if I ever finished that project. I'm going to go look for a project real fast. And I just wanted to display that information. So CD, um, so let's see, colors, Flask, lyric guesser, sunmaker. I'm actually looking for something that I think I wrote. Ah, supers. Yeah, okay, here it is. Python, super. This is Super Flask. This is super, a thing I wrote for a kid's book. So basically it takes, I have a file that it goes and it reads, all these different superheroes, and it creates random superhero teams. So she's a mocha soy latte. He's a soup wielding taxi driver. Together they fight crime. Um, she's a disgruntled paleontologist. He's a culinary ninja. Together they fight crime. It's for kids class. It's for kids book. But that kind of thing, just silly one-off things or simple things, or if I'm going to talk to like an API and just pull things in and be passive. To be honest, the second I need a database, that's usually when I turn around and say, okay, I need to like actually have like Django, because I think Django is much better at dealing with databases, and I don't want to mess around with SQL alchemy. So any other questions? Let's see, which one did I run? So if there's no other questions, let me pull up the, no, Q&A. Don't see any more questions, so I'm going to release everybody early, especially since my voice is starting to go. But thank you all for showing up, and hope to see you all next month. I'll post the next class pretty soon, and we'll set up an install fest to get all the stuff like virtualenv and everything that we need to get installed, all installed in everybody's machines, so that it's easier going forward doing these kind of classes. So thank you very much. Bye.